The letter arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, crisp and official looking, with the Highland Meadows HOA logo embossed in the corner, and I knew immediately my day was about to get complicated. I had just moved into this picture-perfect neighborhood in Scottsdale, Arizona, 6 months ago, and everything had been smooth sailing until now. The house was a beautiful 3-bedroom ranch-style home with a yard that faced the community pool, and I thought I had finally found my slice of suburban paradise. My name is Blake Ivers, and I work from home as a software consultant, which means I spend most of my time in my office, minding my own business, paying my dues on time, and staying out of everyone's way. The letter was from Patricia Henderson, the HOA president, and the moment I saw her name on the signature line, my stomach dropped. Patricia had introduced herself during my first week here, showing up at my door with a binder 3 inches thick, containing all the community rules and regulations. She was a woman in her mid-50s with perfectly styled blonde hair that never seemed to move, even in the Arizona wind, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She wore pastel cardigans in weather that regularly hit 110 degrees, and she carried a clipboard everywhere she went, making notes about everything and everyone. The letter stated that my air conditioning unit had been inspected during a routine community maintenance check, and it was determined that my HVAC system needed immediate servicing. According to the HOA regulations, Section 12, Paragraph 4, all HVAC maintenance and repairs must be conducted by the HOA-approved vendor, Arctic Solutions, LLC. Failure to comply would result in daily fines of $100 until the work was completed by the approved vendor. I read the letter 3 times, feeling my blood pressure rise with each pass. My air conditioner was working perfectly fine. I had just had it serviced 2 weeks ago by a local guy named Rick, who had been highly recommended by several colleagues. Rick had charged me $250 for a full inspection, cleaning, and minor repairs. He was professional, efficient, and his prices were more than fair. I pulled out my laptop and looked up Arctic Solutions, LLC. Their website was sleek and professional, with stock photos of smiling technicians and gleaming trucks. But when I clicked on their service pricing, my jaw dropped. A basic inspection and service ran $600. The same work Rick had done for $250 would cost me more than double. Something did not add up. I checked the HOA bylaws that Patricia had given me during that first visit. I spent 2 hours combing through the dense legal language, and nowhere could I find Section 12, Paragraph 4. There was a Section 12 about exterior modifications and landscaping, but nothing about HVAC systems. The only mention of maintenance requirements stated that homeowners must maintain their properties in good working order, but there was no stipulation about using specific vendors. I decided to call Patricia directly. The phone rang 4 times before she answered, her voice syrupy sweet. Highland Meadows HOA, Patricia Henderson speaking. Hi Patricia, this is Blake Ivers from 4782 Desert Rose Lane. I just received a letter about my HVAC system. Oh yes, Blake. Her tone shifted slightly, becoming more formal. We conducted inspections last week while you were at the grocery store. Your system is overdue for servicing. I actually just had it serviced 2 weeks ago by a licensed professional. Everything is working perfectly. I am sure it is, dear, but according to our regulations, all HVAC work must be completed by Arctic Solutions. They are the only vendor we trust to maintain the standards of our community. I looked through the bylaws you gave me, and I could not find any section requiring the use of a specific vendor. Can you point me to where that is written? There was a pause on the line. I could hear papers shuffling in the background. It was in the amendment passed at the last board meeting. You should have received notification. I never received any notification about an amendment, and even if I had, you cannot retroactively fine me for work I already had done before the amendment passed. Blake, I really do not appreciate your tone. We are simply trying to maintain property values for everyone in the community. Arctic Solutions is fully bonded and insured, and we have a relationship with them that ensures quality work. What kind of relationship? Another pause, longer this time. I do not like what you are implying. If you refuse to comply with the community standards, you will be fined accordingly. Have a nice day. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there staring at my phone, anger bubbling in my chest. Something was definitely wrong here, and I was not about to roll over and pay double for work I did not need. The next morning, I received an email from the HOA with a copy of the supposed amendment. It was dated 3 months ago, during a board meeting that took place on a Thursday afternoon at 2 in the afternoon, when most working people would not be able to attend. The amendment stated that all major system repairs and maintenance, including HVAC, plumbing, and electrical work, must be performed by HOA-approved vendors to ensure quality and consistency across the community. I scrolled through the list of approved vendors. Arctic Solutions for HVAC. Premium Plumbing Solutions for any plumbing work. Elite Electrical Services for electrical issues. I looked up each company online, and every single one of them charged rates that were significantly higher than the market average. A pattern was emerging, and I did not like where it was pointing. I decided to reach out to my neighbors. The house to my left belonged to an older couple, the Richardsons, who kept to themselves but had always been friendly when we crossed paths. I walked over and knocked on their door. Mr. Richardson answered, a tall man in his 70s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Blake, good to see you. What can I do for you? I wanted to ask if you had any issues with the HOA about maintenance vendors. I just got a letter saying I have to use their approved HVAC company. His expression darkened immediately. Oh, you got one of those letters too? Welcome to the club. We got hit with the plumbing requirement last month, had a small leak under our kitchen sink. Our regular plumber could have fixed it for a couple $100, but Patricia insisted we use premium plumbing. They charged us $900 for a 30-minute job. Did you try to fight it? My wife wanted to, but honestly, we are too old for that kind of stress. We paid it and moved on. But between you and me, something is not right about the whole thing. A few other neighbors have mentioned similar situations. You know who else I could talk to? He thought for a moment. Try the Martins on Desert Sage Court and definitely talk to Jennifer Caldwell. She is on Sunset Ridge Drive. She fought one of these letters last year and might have some insight. I thanked him and made my way through the neighborhood. The Martins had a similar story about electrical work. Jennifer Caldwell was home, a woman in her 40s who worked as a lawyer in Phoenix. She invited me in, and we sat in her living room while she told me her story. Last year, Patricia tried to force me to use Elite Electrical to rewire my garage. I am an attorney, so I knew something was off. I demanded to see the original HOA documents and all the board meeting minutes. Turns out, the amendment was pushed through with minimal notice and only 3 board members present, including Patricia. 2 of those board members are her personal friends who rubber stamp anything she wants. Is that legal? Technically, yes, if it follows the proper procedures outlined in the governing documents. But the ethics of it are questionable. I threatened to sue, and they eventually backed down in my case. But I am one person, and Patricia has made my life difficult in other ways since then. Code violations for the tiniest things, questioning every exterior change I make. It is exhausting. You think there is a financial connection between Patricia and these vendors? Jennifer leaned forward, her expression serious. I think there is definitely something going on, but I could not prove it. If you are going to fight this, you need documentation. Get everything in writing. Request all financial records related to these vendor relationships. And you might want to attend the next board meeting and bring other homeowners with you. I left Jennifer's house with a plan forming in my mind. Over the next few days, I started documenting everything. I took photos of my HVAC system and the service records from Rick showing that it was in perfect working order. I requested copies of all board meeting minutes for the past year. I also looked up the business registration information for Arctic Solutions, Premium Plumbing, and Elite Electrical. What I found was interesting. All three companies were registered to addresses in Phoenix, but when I used Google Street View to check them out, two of them appeared to be virtual office spaces. Arctic Solutions had an actual location, a small office in an industrial park. I decided to take a drive. The office was tucked between a warehouse and an auto body shop. There was one truck in the parking lot with the Arctic Solutions logo, but the building itself looked barely occupied. I sat in my car for an hour watching. No one came or went. Finally, I got out and walked up to the front door. Through the window, I could see a small reception area with a desk, but no one was there. I tried the door. It was locked. As I turned to leave, a man in his 30s came around the corner carrying a coffee cup. He wore an Arctic Solutions polo shirt. "Can I help you?" he asked, looking slightly suspicious. "Hi, I am Blake Ivers. I received a notice from my HOA that I need to use your services for my HVAC system." "Oh, Highland Meadows. Yes, that is right." He unlocked the door and gestured for me to come inside. The office was sparse, with motivational posters on the walls and a filing cabinet in the corner. He sat down behind the desk and pulled up something on his computer. "Yeah, we do most of the work for Highland Meadows." "What address?" 4782 Desert Rose Lane, "but I wanted to ask about your pricing." "Your website says a basic service is $600, but I just had the same work done by another company for $250. That seems like a significant markup." He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Well, our pricing includes the HOA coordination fee and our extended warranty coverage." "What is the HOA coordination fee?" "It is just an administrative charge for working with the community association. It is standard practice." "How much is it?" "I would have to check with our billing department." "Is the billing department here?" "No, that is handled by our parent company." "And who is the parent company?" He was getting more uncomfortable by the second. "Listen, I just do the technical work. If you want to schedule a service, I can set that up. Otherwise, you will need to talk to management." "Can I have management's contact information?" He wrote down a phone number on a sticky note and handed it to me. I thanked him and left, feeling more certain than ever that something shady was happening. Back home, I called the management number. It went to a generic voicemail that did not even identify the company. I left a message asking for information about the ownership structure and the HOA coordination fees, but I was not holding my breath for a response. The next HOA board meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday evening at 7. I spent the week rallying neighbors who had been affected by these vendor requirements. By the time Thursday rolled around, I had a group of 8 homeowners ready to attend and speak up. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a nice facility with a main room that could hold about 50 people. When we arrived, Patricia was already there, setting up papers at the head table along with the other 2 board members, Susan Drake and Margaret Willis. All 3 women were cut from the same cloth. perfectly coiffed and dressed in business casual attire that seemed out of place for a casual neighborhood meeting. There were about 15 other residents scattered around the room. Patricia called the meeting to order at exactly 7 o'clock, going through the usual routine of reading minutes from the previous meeting and discussing community announcements. She droned on about the upcoming holiday decoration contest and pool maintenance schedules. When she asked if there was any new business, I stood up. Yes, I would like to discuss the approved vendor list, specifically the requirement that homeowners use Arctic solutions for HVAC work. Patricia's smile tightened. That was addressed in the amendment passed 3 months ago. It is not up for discussion. I disagree. Several homeowners here have concerns about the pricing and the process by which this amendment was passed. I am requesting that the board provide full transparency about their relationship with these vendors. Mr. Richardson stood up. I second that. My wife and I paid over $900 for a simple plumbing repair that should have cost a fraction of that amount. Jennifer Caldwell stood next. As a resident and an attorney, I believe the board needs to provide documentation showing that these vendor relationships are in the best interest of the community and not influenced by any financial kickbacks or conflicts of interest. The room erupted in murmurs. Other residents started standing, voicing their own complaints and experiences. Patricia banged a gavel on the table, her face flushing red. This is completely out of order. The board has acted in full accordance with our governing documents. These vendors were chosen based on their qualifications and their commitment to quality work. Then show us the documentation, I said firmly. Show us the vetting process. Show us competitive bids from other companies. Show us that you are not receiving any compensation from these vendors. How dare you accuse me of corruption? Patricia snapped, standing up so quickly her chair nearly tipped over. I have devoted countless hours to this community, and I will not sit here and be insulted by someone who has been here for less than a year. Susan Drake placed a hand on Patricia's arm, trying to calm her down. Margaret Willis looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Jennifer Caldwell pulled out a folder. I took the liberty of requesting public records regarding the HOA's financial transactions. According to Arizona state law, homeowners have the right to review all financial records of their association. I made the request 2 weeks ago, and I have yet to receive a response. That is a violation of state statute. Patricia's eyes widened slightly, and for the first time I saw genuine worry cross her face. Those records are being compiled. You will receive them in due time. The law says I should have received them within 10 business days. It has been 14. The room was completely silent now. Everyone was watching the exchange like a tennis match. I will need to consult with our attorney, Patricia said, her voice strained. Please do, Jennifer responded coolly. And while you are at it, you might want to explain why Arctic Solutions, Premium Plumbing, and Elite Electrical all share the same business manager listed on their incorporation documents. A business manager named Patricia Henderson. The room exploded. Residents started shouting questions. Patricia went pale, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Susan Drake grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Margaret Willis put her face in her hands. This meeting is adjourned, Patricia shouted over the noise, grabbing her papers and practically running from the room. The residents remained, talking excitedly among themselves. Jennifer came over to me, a satisfied expression on her face. I did some digging after you came to see me. It took some work, but I found the connection. She has been funneling business to companies she partially owns, marking up the prices and pocketing the difference. Is that illegal? Absolutely. It is fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and probably several other charges. I am going to recommend that the residents file a complaint with the Arizona Attorney General's office and consider a civil lawsuit to recover the overcharged amounts. Over the next few days, the neighborhood was buzzing with activity. Jennifer organized a special meeting where she presented all her findings to the community. She had done meticulous research, tracing the ownership of the 3 vendor companies back to Patricia through a series of LLCs and shell companies. It was clear that Patricia had set up the scheme carefully, but not carefully enough to hide it from someone who knew what to look for. The evidence showed that Patricia had been running this operation for at least 2 years, possibly longer. Conservative estimates suggested she had personally profited over $200,000 from the inflated service charges paid by homeowners. A group of 30 homeowners signed on to a formal complaint filed with the Arizona Attorney General's office. Jennifer also helped draft a civil lawsuit seeking restitution for all affected homeowners. The HOA bylaws had provisions for removing board members, and a special election was called to remove Patricia, Susan, and Margaret from their positions. 2 weeks after the explosive board meeting, I was sitting in my living room when I saw police cars pull up to Patricia's house down the street. I watched from my window as 2 officers knocked on her door and spoke with her briefly, before placing her in handcuffs and leading her to the police car. Susan Drake was arrested the same day. Margaret Willis, it turned out, had cooperated with investigators and was given immunity in exchange for her testimony about how Patricia had orchestrated the scheme. The local news picked up the story. HOA president arrested for fraud ran as the headline on the Phoenix news stations. Reporters interviewed residents, including me, about our experiences. The story gained traction because it touched on something many people feared about HOAs: the potential for abuse of power by people with too much control and too little oversight. I spoke with a reporter from the Arizona Republic, explaining how the scheme had worked and how it had finally been uncovered. The article detailed Patricia's elaborate setup and the estimated damages to the community. It also sparked a larger conversation about HOA oversight and the need for better regulations to protect homeowners. The legal process moved slowly, as legal processes do. Patricia was charged with multiple counts of fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and theft. Her attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the Attorney General's office was not interested in going easy on her. The case was too high profile, and they wanted to send a message that this kind of behavior would not be tolerated. Meanwhile, the community held elections for new board members. Jennifer Caldwell was elected president. Mr. Richardson and 2 other level-headed homeowners joined the board. Their first order of business was to dissolve the approved vendor list and return to a system where homeowners could choose their own qualified contractors. They also implemented new financial oversight measures, including quarterly financial reports available to all residents and an independent audit of all HOA funds. The civil lawsuit moved forward as well. Jennifer was not handling it personally due to her conflict of interest as HOA president, but she connected the homeowners with a law firm that specialized in HOA disputes. The case was strong, and the attorney was confident they would recover most if not all of the overcharged amounts. I continued my life in Highland Meadows, but the community felt different now. People were more engaged, more aware of what was happening in their own neighborhood. Attendance at board meetings increased dramatically. Residents formed committees to review the bylaws and suggest changes to prevent future abuse. Rick, my original HVAC guy, became the go-to person for air conditioning work in the neighborhood. I referred him to at least a dozen neighbors, and he was grateful for the business. He even gave me a discount on my next service call as a thank you for standing up to the HOA. Several months after Patricia's arrest, the criminal trial began. I was called to testify about my experience receiving the initial letter and my subsequent investigation. The prosecution built a thorough case, presenting financial records, testimony from Margaret Willis, and statements from dozens of affected homeowners. Patricia's defense attorney tried to argue that she had been trying to ensure quality service for the community, and that any personal benefit was incidental. It was a weak argument, and the jury did not buy it. After 3 days of testimony and just 4 hours of deliberation, they returned a guilty verdict on all counts. The judge sentenced Patricia to 5 years in prison and ordered her to pay full restitution to all affected homeowners, plus additional fines. Susan Drake received 3 years and was also ordered to pay restitution. The amounts were substantial, and it was unclear whether Patricia would ever be able to pay back everything she owed, but at least justice had been served. The civil lawsuit settled shortly after the criminal verdict. The HOA's insurance company agreed to cover a significant portion of the restitution, and Patricia was on the hook for the rest. Homeowners received checks ranging from a few hundred to several $1,000s, depending on how much they had been overcharged during the scheme. I received a check for $1,200, representing not only the difference in the HVAC service I had fought against, but also retroactive overcharges on other services I had used without realizing they were inflated. It felt good to get the money back, but more than that, it felt good to know that standing up to corruption had made a real difference. Life in Highland Meadows settled into a new normal. The community pool got an upgrade using funds that had been sitting in reserve accounts Patricia had not been disclosing. The landscaping improved. The new board was responsive to resident concerns and transparent in their decision-making. Jennifer proved to be an excellent HOA president. She ran meetings efficiently, communicated clearly, and always put the community's interests first. Under her leadership, the neighborhood thrived. Property values actually increased because people wanted to live in a community that had proven it could root out corruption and govern itself effectively. I became more involved in community activities myself. I joined the Architectural Review Committee, helping to review requests for exterior modifications and ensuring the process was fair and reasonable. It was a small time commitment, but it felt important to stay engaged and help prevent future problems. One evening, about a year after the whole situation had started, I was sitting on my back patio enjoying the Arizona sunset when my phone rang. It was Mr. Richardson. "Blake, I wanted to thank you again for everything you did. My wife and I were just talking about how different things are now, and we realized none of it would have happened if you had not been willing to stand up to Patricia. I appreciate that, but a lot of people stepped up. Jennifer did most of the heavy lifting with the legal work." "True, but you were the one who refused to back down when she first tried to push you around. That took courage, especially being new to the neighborhood. You did not know if anyone would support you." "I just knew it was not right. I could not let it go." "Well, we are all grateful. This is a much better place to live now." After we hung up, I sat there thinking about the whole experience. When that letter had first arrived, I had been angry and frustrated. I could have just paid the money and avoided all the hassle. A lot of people would have done exactly that, choosing the path of least resistance even when they knew something was wrong. But I had learned something important through all of this. Communities only work when people are willing to stand up for what is right, even when it is difficult. HOAs can be a force for good, maintaining property values and creating pleasant neighborhoods. But they can also become tools for abuse when the wrong people gain control and residents are too apathetic or intimidated to push back. The key is engagement. Knowing the rules, attending meetings, asking questions, and demanding transparency. It is not glamorous work, and it takes time that most people would rather spend doing something else. But it is necessary. I also learned that you are usually not alone when you stand up to injustice. There were other people in Highland Meadows who knew something was wrong, who had been affected by Patricia's scheme, but they needed someone to take the first step. Once I did, others joined in, and together we were able to make real change. The story made its way through local HOA networks and even got some national attention in homeowner advocacy circles. Jennifer was invited to speak at a conference about HOA governance and reform. She talked about the Highland Meadows case and the lessons learned. Other communities reached out asking for advice on improving their own oversight and preventing similar situations. Some good came from it beyond just our neighborhood. The Arizona State Legislature introduced a bill to strengthen HOA financial disclosure requirements and increase penalties for board members who engaged in self-dealing. It was not perfect legislation, but it was a step in the right direction. As for the approved vendor companies, they all shut down once the scheme was exposed. The few legitimate employees they had found work elsewhere. The fake office spaces were vacated. Arctic Solutions, Premium Plumbing Solutions, and Elite Electrical Services vanished as quickly as they had appeared. Rick continued to do excellent work around the neighborhood. He was honest, fairly priced, and did quality work. It was exactly what people wanted and needed, without the corruption and price gouging that had characterized Patricia's scheme. I think about that first letter sometimes, the one that started everything. Such a simple thing, a notice about HVAC service, but it opened up a whole can of worms. If I had not been paying attention, if I had not taken the time to actually read the bylaws and do some research, Patricia's scheme would have continued. More homeowners would have been victimized, and she would have walked away with even more money. There is a part of me that wonders how many other HOAs have similar problems. Corruption that goes unnoticed because residents trust their board members or are too busy to pay attention. It is probably more common than anyone wants to admit, but there is also reason for hope. Communities like Highland Meadows show that change is possible when people work together and refuse to accept corruption. It takes courage, effort, and persistence, but it can be done. My relationship with my neighbors improved through all of this. Before the HOA fight, I knew people casually, waving hello and making small talk about the weather. After everything that happened, there was a real sense of community. We had been through something together, fought for something together, and won together. That creates bonds that last. The Richardsons became good friends. We started having dinner together once a month. Jennifer and I served on the board together for 2 years before she moved to Seattle for a job opportunity. When she left, I was elected HOA president, a position I never imagined wanting but felt honored to accept. As president, I made it a priority to maintain the transparency and accountability that Jennifer had established. I held quarterly town halls where residents could ask questions about anything. I published detailed financial reports on our community website. I made sure board meetings were well publicized and held at times when working people could actually attend. Not everything was perfect. We still had disputes about noise complaints, parking issues, and the occasional disagreement about architectural modifications. That is just part of living in a community. But those were normal, manageable problems, not the kind of systemic corruption that Patricia had perpetrated. The experience changed me in ways I am still discovering. Before all this, I was the kind of person who avoided conflict and just wanted to be left alone. I did my work, paid my bills, and did not make waves. But standing up to Patricia taught me that sometimes making waves is exactly what you need to do. It also taught me the value of community. I had moved to Highland Meadows thinking of it as just a place to live, a house I owned in a nice neighborhood. But it became much more than that. It became a place where I had friends, where I contributed, where I belonged. One of the most satisfying moments came about 18 months after everything had started, when I received a letter from the Arizona Attorney General's office thanking me for my role in uncovering the fraud and assisting with the investigation. It was just a form letter, really, but it meant something to see in writing that what we had done mattered. Patricia served her time, though I heard through the grapevine that she was released after 3 years for good behavior. I do not know where she ended up, and I do not really care. She is no longer a part of Highland Meadows, and that is all that matters to me. Susan Drake moved out of state after serving her sentence. Her house was sold at a loss, and a nice family from California moved in. They had no idea about the history, and we did not burden them with it. The past was past. Highland Meadows continued to be a great place to live. The new pool upgrade was fantastic. The landscaping looked better than ever. And most importantly, residents trusted their HOA board because we had earned that trust through transparency and accountability. I still think about that HVAC letter from time to time. Such a small thing, really, a notice about air conditioning service. But it opened my eyes to a problem I did not know existed and set in motion a chain of events that changed an entire community. If there is a lesson in all of this, it is simple. Pay attention. Read the fine print. Ask questions. Do not assume that people in positions of authority always have your best interests at heart, and when you see something wrong, speak up. You might be surprised at how many other people have been waiting for someone to take that first step. Living in Highland Meadows now, with its well-maintained common areas, engaged residents, and honest leadership, I sometimes forget how different things were during Patricia's reign. But then I will see Rick's truck parked at a neighbor's house, doing HVAC work for a fair price, and I will remember. Or I will attend a board meeting where we discuss the budget openly and residents ask tough questions that we answer honestly, and I will remember. The experience made me a better neighbor, a better community member, and probably a better person. It taught me that ordinary people can make a difference when they are willing to stand up for what is right. It taught me that corruption thrives in darkness, but withers in the light of transparency. Most importantly, it taught me that home is not just the house you own, but the community you help build. Highland Meadows is my home, and I am proud of what we accomplished together. We faced a problem, we fought back, and we won. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone who came after us. The HVAC letter was just the beginning, but what a beginning it turned out to be. From one simple notice about requiring an overpriced service to uncovering a major fraud scheme, putting corrupt officials in prison, recovering hundreds of thousands of dollars for homeowners, and completely transforming how our community operated. It was quite a journey, and I am glad I took it. These days, when new residents move into Highland Meadows, they often hear the story. It has become part of the community lore, a reminder of what can happen when residents stay vigilant and work together. Some people think we are overly cautious now, too focused on oversight and transparency. But most understand why we do things the way we do, and they appreciate living in a community that takes governance seriously. I am grateful for the friends I made through all of this, for the lessons I learned, and for the opportunity to make a real difference in my community. When I look back on that Tuesday afternoon when the letter arrived, I could never have imagined where it would lead, but I would not change a thing. Highland Meadows is proof that communities can reform themselves, that corruption can be rooted out, and that ordinary people have more power than they realize. All it takes is someone willing to ask questions, do the research, and refuse to back down when they know something is wrong. That someone happened to be me, but it could have been anyone. And that is perhaps the most important lesson of all. We all have the power to stand up, to make a difference, to change things for the better. We just have to be willing to use it.